Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it.
It's important because it's part of our history, part of our heritage, and one of the few physical evidences remaining of the Spanish period of Philippine history.
There are many good stories about Filipinos, people who headed the construction of the walls. The carvers were Filipinos also. It was a very exciting time. That's what I remember most, having a restoration force as big as Intramuros was at the time. Well, didn't exist anywhere in the country. When we came into Intramuros to work, what are we restoring? We do not know. How did it look, except for the ruined walls? That's why we have to dig pictures and pictures and pictures just to be able to provide a background.
And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people.
The greatest satisfaction I had was the presence of a good team because basically the three of us were the ones who set the initial directions of the Intramuros administration.
Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people considering the problems we had in the beginning. They have thousands of people coming here, and all of them are paying the entrance fees, restaurants, everything.
We start here in Fort Santiago, where we trace the prehistoric Philippines in the Kingdom of Ra Sulaiman.
He introduced me Manila, and I fell in love with it. That's why we started Don't Skip Manila, to say, okay, since I fell in love with your stories, why not let's share it to others and let other people to fall in love with Manila.
Don't Skip Manila is a tour group that conducts several tours in Manila, especially here in Intramuros.
We are the one who tells the story of this place and what's the importance of it.
We wanted to somehow see Intramuros evolve into not just the old Manila, rather the Manila what is and the Manila of the present. I'm Andre, and this is Han, and we're from Don't Skip Manila. Intramuros is a good backdrop of being in a place where the destination speaks itself.
Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it.
It's important because it's part of our history, part of our heritage, and one of the few physical evidences remaining of the Spanish period of Philippine history.
There are many good stories about Filipinos, people who headed the construction of the walls. The carvers were Filipinos also. It was a very exciting time. That's what I remember most, having a restoration force as big as Intramuros was at the time. Well, didn't exist anywhere in the country. When we came into Intramuros to work, what are we restoring? We do not know. How did it look, except for the ruined walls? That's why we have to dig pictures and pictures and pictures just to be able to provide a background.
And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people.
The greatest satisfaction I had was the presence of a good team because basically the three of us were the ones who set the initial directions of the Intramuros administration.
Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people considering the problems we had in the beginning. They have thousands of people coming here and all of them are paying entrance fees, restaurants, all those cales. Can you imagine? It's alive.
You have many people saying that Intramuros should not be preserved because it is a colonial memory and that should be erased. I don't think so. So it's about time that our people should see Intramuros is not just a symbol of colonialization, but a symbol of our spirit to rise above that.
Intramuros for me is a sense of curiosity and wonder. It's heritage and history, and it's a living experience. It's a place where you can see history come to life and where we believe there's a strong future for sustainable tourism. So bamboo is arguably one of the most sustainable building materials on the planet. We're using local Philippine bamboo that is then handcrafted into our products so that we can create jobs, but then also share a bit of Filipino design and flair with our international guests. We've been manufacturing bamboo bicycles. It is as part of a sustainable livelihood program. And here in Intramuros, we've been doing guided bamboo bike tours for now it's been about 5 years. They get to ride the bamboo bikes around these historic walls. You can explore the nooks and crannies, the different chambers and gates and parks and buildings and museums and churches and everything. The different streets here all have something exploration worthy. Bambike helps you discover Intramuros like nothing else. So my name is Brian Benitez McClelland. I'm the founder of Bambike, and we're operating Bambike Eco Tours here in Intramuros. Bambike gets to help the guests experience Intramuros from a different perspective, sharing Philippine culture, our history, and the architecture and the stories of what really were the foundational years of Philippines here in Intramuros.
Every great and important city has an old town. Intramuros to me is Manila's old town. I have always been awed by Intramuros. It seems like when I'm coming here, there is an excitement that you feel that what happened in this place. There is something so sacred, so noble, so precious about Intramuros. I named it after my grandmother, Barbara, to just give it a Spanish flavor. And for some years, after a few years, we decided to really gear towards heritage so that people will see and know what is heritage, what is sinauna, yung kinaugalian natin, yung traditions natin, which will be seen in our cuisine and in our performances, in the dance that we present here in Barbara's. I would attribute it to my mom, to my mother, who taught me the value of work, the value of excellence, the value of feeding people in style and giving them satisfaction. I would want to happen that Intramuros will be remembered by every person who comes to this place because of its uniqueness, its sacredness, its history, its everything. There is so much here. I'm Barbara Gordon de los Reyes of Barbara's Heritage Restaurant. I have been in Intramuros for the past 30 years, which has been a great part of my work, my joys. It's like an adventure.
I'm Martin Tino Jr. My lolo became chairman of the COMELEC, and he was the one who transferred the COMELEC to Intramuros. I was in grade school. He would go home at 6 o'clock every afternoon. They pick us up at 4 o'clock, so I have to wait for him in his office. So I would go around Intramuros in the early 50s. It was all ruins. I've always been interested in old houses. I began traveling throughout the whole country. Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. This is our history. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it. IA was founded. And Jimmy Laya, I didn't know Jimmy Laya. He got me as a consultant. Then we started having exhibits. The first ever on relieves, on santos, on ivory. We have all these horrible looking modern buildings. I wish they could tear it down and rebuild it properly. And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people. In the afternoon, Intramuros was empty. Empty. There was hardly any people. Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people, considering the problem.
As I always say before, no, whenever we say Manila, Manila was of course Intramuros, and during the Spanish period, and it was their prime city, no? And so everything that was about Philippine history and culture during the Spanish and of course the American period began and eventually developed in the walled city. And in the course of time, no, this would become also a prime urban tourism area, especially with the restoration and the heritage conservation that has been going on in the city. I think the biggest challenge for Intramuros is for it to be incorporated into that modernization without affecting the historical heritage of the walled city. I mean, accommodations can be done for the modernization that is happening. Internet, telephones, modern facilities for tourists, but it doesn't have to come at the sacrifice of what existed there before. I think that's one of the biggest challenge until today, for developing Intramuros. I'm Dr. Jose Victor Torres. I'm a I'm a associate professor here at the History Department of the De La Salle University. I teach Rizal and Philippine history here in the History Department. Well, I think it's because it's one of the closest place. If you're a foreign visitor, it's one of the closest place and one of the most visited based on tourism information. It's one of the most visited places in Manila. Because you have to remember, Manila is the capital city, and a capital city has to have its attraction, both old and new. And for so many years, that old attraction, and I don't mean old because it's passé, no? It's old because it's part of our past, and the realization that there was something that remained behind for the people to know and experience and see with their own eyes is probably something that's an experience, a good experience for visitors, both foreign and local. I'd probably siguro describe Intramuros as rich. It's rich in heritage. It's rich in the Filipino identity, and it's very rich in our history and culture. And I think that would fit the description not only before but today. And as I always said, whenever you walk through the streets of Intramuros, you are walking through Philippine history.
Intramuros was the biggest European city in Asia. It defines our culture. The problem is most of our officials do not appreciate it.
It's important because it's part of our history, part of our heritage, and one of the few physical evidences remaining of the Spanish period of Philippine history.
There are many good stories about Filipinos, people who headed the construction of the walls. The carvers were Filipinos also. It was a very exciting time. That's what I remember most, having a restoration force as big as Intramuros was at the time. Well, didn't exist anywhere in the country. When we came into Intramuros to work, what are we restoring? We do not know. How did it look, except for the ruined walls? That's why we have to dig pictures and pictures and pictures just to be able to provide a background.
And in the early days, it was really a dead town. Even when Casa Manila was finished, we would make whatever pakulo just to bring in people.
The greatest satisfaction I had was the presence of a good team because basically the three of us were the ones who set the initial directions of the Intramuros administration.
Since last year, I'm really amazed at how Intramuros has grown and has attracted so many people, considering the problems we had in the beginning. They have thousands of people coming here, and all of them are paying the entrance fees, restaurants, all those cales. So can you imagine? It's alive.
You have many people saying that Intramuros should not be preserved because it is a colonial memory and that should be erased. I don't think so. So it's about time that our people should see Intramuros is not just a symbol of colonialization, but a symbol of our spirit to rise above that.
If there's something about Manila that hasn't changed ever since, it's the lovely sunrise and sunset, as if reminding us that in all the chaos, there's still beauty to find in this place we all call home. And moving around it every day, doing the things that we have to do,
Welcome everyone to today's episode, the 12th episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions, brought to you by the Intramuros Administration and the National Park Development Committee. Now, I would like to call on the Administrator of Intramuros, who will introduce for us today a very special person who will give some warm words of welcome. Administrator.
Good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you again to another episode of the Intramuros Learning Session. We are fortunate to have a sister agency with us. But before we start, allow me to introduce the Secretary of Tourism, who also serves as the Chairman of the Board of the Intramuros Administration and also the Chairman of the National Parks and Development Committee. Madam Secretary.
Yes, thank you, Admin G. And ED Cecile. Good afternoon. Today, June 19, is the birthday of our national hero, Dr. Jose Rizal. There has been a number of stories and presentations about our national hero, but a webinar about the place where he last set his foot on has yet to materialize. At any rate, I am pleased that Intramuros Administration and the National Parks Development Committee have come up with a lecture about Rizal Park. Intramuros, after all, is connected to this large parcel of land for two reasons. First was when Raja Sulaiman and his people were displaced and they settled in Bagumbayan during the early 16th century. And second was when Rizal walked from Fort Santiago to Luneta on the day of his execution. The connection of these two places, Intramuros and Rizal Park, are one for the books, and we will get to hear more about this connection through this webinar entitled A Visit to Luneta's Colorful Past, Current State, and Future Developments. Bagumbayan, Luneta, Rizal Park. This place had several names. Its colorful past will reveal several other heroes apart from Rizal, as well as other significant events that took place. As it is currently a public park, perhaps a good question to start with is what is in store for the visitors when it eventually opens its doors again to the public? What can they expect? Through the decades, Rizal Park has served its purpose as an area that is open to the public. But have we fully utilized the Rizal Park? Have we discovered and learned more about Rizal? Have we ever took our time and fully explored the park? The park is a cultural and historical corridor. It's near Ermita and Malate, where the colleges and universities are located. Within the complex is the National Library of the Philippines, the National Museum, and the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. All of these are guardians and bearers of our culture, and all of them are located near or within the Rizal Park. I am happy that as the NPDC is an attached agency of the Department of Tourism, its executive director, Cecile Lorenzana Romero, and deputy executive director, Jezreel Apelar, who are our today's speakers, have prepared a number of plans, programs, and activities that are in line with the Department of Tourism's objective to promote local tourism. It is indeed a welcome development that Intramuros administration and NPDC are working hand in hand to give our visitors a complete experience in the areas of culture, history, and creativity. I hope that through this webinar, we see more plans in relation to how we can encourage local tourists to Manila, particularly in Rizal Park and in Intramuros. Congratulations once again to IA and NPDC for organizing this webinar, and I look forward to a fruitful partnership between these two attached agencies of the Department of Tourism. Thank you at mabuhay kayong lahat.
Thank you, Madam Secretary, for that very inspiring remarks. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And thank you, everyone who is with us here today. This is now our 12th episode of the Intramuros Learning Sessions. And if you missed any of our previous episodes, you may go to our official YouTube channel. Just key in Intramuros Administration or go to bit.ly/IAILS. And if you like this episode, please feel free to follow us. We are in Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Today is the 159th birth anniversary of Jose Rizal. So happy birthday to our birthday boy. And as such, relevant to today's celebration, our topic for today will be about the Rizal Park, its history, its present, and future plans. But before that, here are some reminders first. If you would like to ask questions, you may send it through the Q&A button, which is also found in the lower portion of the screen. If you are viewing on Facebook, you may send in your questions in the comment section. Please note that we will do our best to accommodate all of the questions, subject to the availability of our speaker should we exceed the time limit. Only those who have successfully registered and viewed on Zoom will be eligible to get a certificate. A feedback form will be emailed to you after the session, and the certificate will be sent within a week. And if you are unable to attend the webinar, please let us know so we can give the slot to another registrant. Ensure that your audio is okay. Wear your reliable set of headphones. Don't be shy to ask questions and get yourself comfortable and enjoy. Now, I'd like to call on again the Administrator of Intramuros who will introduce for us our guest speakers from NPDC. Administrator. Good afternoon, everyone. So for this afternoon, we are pleased to partner with our sister agency located just near Intramuros, the National Parks Development Committee. We are fortunate to have the Executive Director herself and the Deputy Executive Director give us their thoughts regarding their plans and the development of the park as well. Cecile Romero, the Executive Director of NPDC, is a very versatile, reliable, and efficient leader. She has 10 years of combined academic, private, and urban planning experience in a high-paced environment. Director Cecile has been in the NPDC for a little over a year, but she has done tremendous work so far as well in terms of the overall development of the park. Our other guest panel is the Deputy Executive Director himself as well, uh, Jezreel Apelar. Jess is an urban planner by profession, and prior to being appointed as Deputy Executive Director of the NPDC, he used to be the National Council Coordinator for the Urban Land Institute Philippines. And Jess has considerable experience in terms of sustainability and resiliency projects, including that of the Bonifacio Golf BGC Greenway Park Livable Cities Competition. And he holds a master's degree in city planning from the University of Pennsylvania. He also graduated magna cum laude from the University of Southern California with a Bachelor of Science in Public Policy, Management, and Planning, and received a certificate in advanced Spanish language from the Universidad de Deusto Bilbao, Spain. So, on the day of the celebration of the birthday of our national hero, we are pleased to welcome this afternoon the Executive Director and Deputy Executive Director of the National Parks Development.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you, Attorney Guillermo. Okay, good afternoon. I would like first to acknowledge and thank Secretary Bernadette Puyat and the rest of the Department of Tourism, the Intramuros administration headed by Administrator Attorney Guillermo Asido, and his staff, Sheena, Rancho, Jeffrey, Kimberly, Remil, Alan, and for inviting us to be part of the Intramuros learning session. And of course, I have to mention Flor, Marco, and Danny of NPDC. It's very apt that we talk about Luneta today on the 159th birth anniversary of Jose Rizal. We live in interesting times and are doing so many firsts because of this pandemic. Let me read a quote by Jose Rizal, which is applicable to our session today. In order to read the destiny of a people, it is necessary to open the book of its past. Our topic for today is Luneta's story. We look back and learn about Luneta's interesting past, see what's happening in the present, and our plan for its future, given the current situation that we are in. We hope you will enjoy episode 12 of this Intramuros learning session.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you again to Secretary Berna, Attorney Guillier, and the rest of the IA team. So I will be sharing we will be sharing a quick presentation, ED Cecile and I, basically a chronological history of the site of Luneta, or Rizal Park as we know it, leading to today and also our future plans. So let me share you my screen. Okay. Share screen. Okay, so let's get into it. So where is Luneta exactly? Today, Luneta or Rizal Park is actually in Ermita, Manila, in the city of Manila. Believe it or not, it's in Barangay 666. Yes, that is real. There are registered voters. It's about 53 hectares. It is managed by the National Parks Development Committee. And again, we'll walk you through 500 years basically of what has happened on this site, an abridged version. So on the site of Bagumbayan or Luneta, there was a kingdom of Maynila headed by the Raja Sulaiman. And across the river Pasig was the kingdom of Tondo. When the Spanish arrived in 1570, they actually came from the Visayas and they decided to move up north. They heard of the trading post of Manila, and they decided to conquer Manila. And they actually burnt down this kingdom which is where Intramuros is now. The natives, naman, they fled. They fled to the neighboring communities, and the Spanish decided to build themselves their own fort, their own city, essentially, on the site of the former kingdom, the Tagalog Kingdom of Maynila. And then in that period, they decided to also build this walled city. So they built walls around what we call Intramuros today. If you see on the right-hand side, you could see a little. If you could see my cursor, this is where Bagumbayan or Luneta is. It's outlined by this blue dotted line. There were actually villages surrounding Intramuros, what we call the villages of Extramuros. So from Santiago, Bagumbayan, San Juan, San Fernando de Dilao. San Fernando de Dilao was actually a residential community of Japanese refugees, those Japanese Christians actually who were fleeing Japan. And then San Miguel was also a site for the Japanese samurai naman. And of course San Miguel, because it's San Miguel the Archangel. And the Parian, which we all know, is the site of where the Chinese are, and that's today where the post office stands. So where does Luneta, the name, come from? Luneta actually comes from the French word lunette, which is a crescent-shaped structure for defense fortifications. Again, Intramuros was a walled city, and just around it, or just outside of it, there were lunettes, and that's how we have the name Luneta. And one of the lunettes is actually, you'll see later, located just outside of just outside of the wall. So this image is a computerized rendering of what Intramuros would have looked like, and the surrounding community. You see here the shoreline actually is much closer than what it is today. Much of the port area is actually reclaimed. So the shoreline and the beaches surrounded Intramuros. And you even have two moats that surrounded the Intramuros walls for protection. And then you have the arrabales, or the suburbs, the communities surrounding Intramuros. So this is on the lower left, that's the site of Luneta today. And this is one of the lunettes. In this old map, you see the actual lunette or Luneta fortification on site. Of course, it's no longer there today, but this map kind of depicts and gives you an idea of the grand scale of this lunette that defined this area. And then further south, you have the communities of Ermita and Malate. So the Black Nazarene actually has an interesting story. It arrived from Mexico via galleons in 1606, and it was first placed in a church, La Iglesia de San Juan Bautista in Bagumbayan. And then 2 years later, it moved inside the walls of Intramuros to the Church of San Nicolas de Tolentino, or Recoletos Church. So because of the people's devotion to the Black Nazarene, they decided to create a second replica. This second replica of the Black Nazarene actually was eventually moved or transferred to Quiapo Church. So dalawa yung Black Nazarene. May Nazareno ng mayaman at Nazareno ng mahirap. So the Nazareno ng mayaman, which was inside Intramuros, it stayed there until 1945, but we lost it during the Battle of Manila. So the Nazareno that we actually have today is the mahirap one, and that's the one that survives, and that's the one that we have during our processions. And so that is also why we celebrate, or we celebrate the Feast of the Black Nazarene, or what we call the traslacion, or it literally means movement or moving in Spanish. So it starts in Luneta, passes through Intramuros, and then ends up in Quiapo. So that's what we're following. That's what we do, this tradition. So going back to this map, you have the Arabales, or the Extramuros villages. And it plays an important role in when the British come to attack Manila in 1762. The 7 Years' War was happening in Europe and in the Americas when Britain declared war against France and Spain. And being a Spanish colony, the Philippines was, or Manila was a target of the British. And so they attacked Manila, landed in Malate, and worked their way to Bagumbayan, the village of Bagumbayan. And from the village of Bagumbayan, they attacked Intramuros. It was very close to the walls of Intramuros, and they were easily bombarded, and they were able to capture and enter Intramuros within 40 hours. So it's one of the dark chapters of Intramuros' history, because historians claim that it really was a rape of Manila. The British soldiers, seamen, and even a contingency of Indians, what we call sepoys, they looted and pillaged whatever they could find on the streets of Intramuros. So much that even some of the religious garments, religious images were paraded and mocked by the British. And they were able to even find so much treasure that these British were able to retire after they had looted Manila. So for 20 months, the British occupied Manila, and surprisingly, Spain actually didn't even know that they lost Manila until after, when the treaty, when they had a Treaty of Paris, and then the Manila was given back to Spain. So, and what's interesting is that it was the British East India Company flag that was flying over Manila. So once the Philippines, once Manila was returned back to the Spaniards, they immediately feared that the British and other foreign powers would be able to recapture Manila again. So they ordered Extramuros villages to be cleared. So nawala yung Bagumbayan, San Juan, and even the Parian, where the Chinese were. They were moved across the river by this time to Binondo. And here you have a map of the cleared area between Ermita and Intramuros, which is where Bagumbayan used to be, the Bagumbayan town. Bagumbayan actually comes from the Spanish word nuevo barrio, so new town. And you see the Chinese moved here. This whole area around Intramuros is cleared. The site also featured a beautiful promenade facing Manila Bay, what the Spaniards called, what we called Malecon. So there are seaside promenades, and they also had calzadas, which were carriage driveways where you could take your carriage, take a stroll. It eventually became a site for recreation. They also created the Paseo de Luneta, and this is where the monument is located today. Again, the shoreline was Rojas Boulevard and Bonifacio Drive, what we know today. Anything beyond of that was reclaimed during the American period. You see here the Paseo de Luneta in 1894, a bandstand with playing music. You can watch the sunset. And I really like this image of Luneta, because you see so many different kinds of people on a late afternoon. Here you have clergymen, you have Chinese, you have a street child, Filipinos, you have Spanish, you have mestizos, really people from all walks of life, which is what Luneta still is, 100 years later. It's a gathering place of different kinds of people. Everybody, just wants to get a breath of fresh air and get some open space. Intramuros at that time, by the late 1800s, was very crowded. And a lot of the well-to-do families moved their homes to Ermita and Malate, where they had more space. And in the evenings, everybody came out to stroll along the Luneta. So really nice old images. So Luneta actually had a dual purpose. So it was not only recreation space, but it was also a killing field throughout the 1800s. It had a dual purpose, and in the morning they would have they would have some executions, and in the evening it would return to its state as a leisure field. So it really was a site where a lot of our Filipino heroes were executed eventually, and the Cavite Mutiny of 1872 actually this is a starting point for that. There was an uprising in Cavite where the government lifted exemptions from payments of tributes and taxes, and so the Filipinos in Cavite revolted. They quickly crushed it, but the sad part was that the Spanish used this opportunity to also execute 3 Filipino priests, Padre Gomez, Padre Burgos, and Padre Zamora, which collectively we know as Gomburza. And they were blamed for the Cavite Mutiny and sentenced to be executed. And these 3 became martyrs to the Philippine cause for Philippine independence. They were brilliant men. They were intellectuals. They were writers. They were brilliant men during their time. And the Spanish saw them as a threat, being educated and moving up the ranks, really. And this is also the same reason why later on that we see more prominent executions of Filipinos who are enlightened or and really starting the movement towards independence, or that consciousness for nationalism. It was born here, actually, soon after the execution of Gomburza. And it even affected 11-year-old Jose Rizal once he heard about the executions of Gomburza. And it was the Gomburza who inspired Jose Rizal to write El Filibusterismo. And so this is the turning point in our nation's history. Later on, more revolutionaries and katipuneros would be executed in Luneta. A total of about 800 people, more or less, are to be martyred here on Bagumbayan. This is a photo of Rizal's execution. And today, the site where he was executed, it is currently what we call the martyrdom of Jose Rizal. We have these little larger than life-size statues made by Castrillo. So you can visit this site once we reopen the park again. So soon after, we have the Filipinos' quest for independence, and the Philippine Revolution begins. But something else was happening on the other side of the globe. The Spanish-American War was happening, where United States decides to declare war on Spain, and battles in Cuba occurred, and eventually Admiral Dewey, decides to attack Manila, and he came to Manila, slipped through Corregidor Island at night, and in the morning attacked Spain's dilapidated and weak navy by morning. And immediately Spain surrendered the Philippines. So Spain overall surrendered to the United States, losing their colonies, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Guam, and eventually selling the Philippines for $20 million. And of course, we thought that we had our independence, and we from a foreign power. But no, America decides to take control and seize the islands, and we have the Filipino-American War immediately after. So for about 3 years, Filipinos and Americans were fighting. But eventually, by 1902, America was able to seize control of the Philippine Islands, and we became officially a colony of the United States. So this picture is Luneta in 1901. Of course, wala pa si Jose Rizal. You see the seaside Malecon, and then the mansions of a lot of the upper class or elite Americans eventually moved into that area. So here you see the map of Intramuros and just outside Luneta. So now we have the Burnham Plan for Manila. With America coming to the Philippines, what better way to control the Philippines than to change the built environment and establish new civic architecture and urban designs. No? So they wanted Manila to be showcased as part of the City Beautiful movement, to be the pearl of the Orient, and Manila was to be at par with America's vision for it being its example out in the Asia Pacific region. And this is the beginnings of America transforming Filipino life and Filipino cities through architecture and urban planning and design. So Burnham came to Manila in 1904, and he drew plans for even other parts of the country, including Baguio City. But it was really carried out by William Parsons and Juan Arellano, the finer details. I attended a talk by Ian Morley, and he said that the Burnham Plan was actually just 2 pages, and it was very prescriptive. No, it wasn't in detail. So these 2 men were really the ones executing Burnham's plan when he left. And really, it was a shift in terms of how Philippine cities were shaped. Originally, Philippine cities were shaped as a result of the Law of the Indies by Spain, where you had the church as the center of city life, of Filipino life. With the Americans, you have a different regime. You have, no longer is the church the center, but there is a separation of church and state. You have grand civic architecture that echoes Greece and Rome, the Greco-Roman architecture and ideals of democracy, freedom. And so here you have also, during this era, what we call in urban planning the City Beautiful movement, which really Daniel Burnham is a product of. And Manila, like many cities around that time, were reshaping itself into this image. This is the Chicago World's Fair. Washington, D.C. was also redesigned or designed by Daniel Burnham. You see there's this sort of ceremonial aspect to how the city is planned and developed. There is a reverence and respect for government buildings and institutions, wide boulevards radiating out of monuments. You have park spaces, fountains, waterways and views are maximized to really uplift the morality of the people, really. And this was one way America could show its power to the Filipino people, by reshaping its cities and civic architecture. Just as an aside, the Pennsylvania Station in New York, as you can see here, was also part of that movement. It also was the inspiration for William Parsons' design of Papa Station, built 5 years after. So I promise you this Papa Station has a connection to Luneta later on. So Burnham's plan for Baguio is here. The centerpiece of that is being the Burnham Park, Burnham Lake, which used to be also part of NPDC a couple of years back. In Cebu, William Parsons also had a City Beautiful plan. While the provincial capital has elements of Art Deco, I think the urban planning is very much City Beautiful. Zamboanga, being one of the biggest city in Mindanao at the time, also had a plan by Parsons. And the grid pattern of Parsons is actually still very visible in Zamboanga City's downtown area today, as well as the parks and plazas that are there. So, really, across the Philippines, you see vestiges of this new type of urbanism that the Americans were introducing in provincial capitals, in city halls, from Luzon, Visayas, to Mindanao. It's very evident, and a lot of that architecture is still followed today. Again, you have this neoclassical architecture that's very symbolic and powerful. Here is Burnham's plan for Manila. At the core of it being Luneta. Everything radiates from Intramuros and Luneta. Intramuros was kept intact. The plan also called for reclamation 1,000 feet into Manila Bay to add more park spaces and to really enjoy the views of Manila Bay. So a street pattern was also to be established. Fountains in every quarter of the city should have parks and open spaces for people to be able to breathe. Wide streets and boulevards for ease of communication and travel. This is Luneta, high definition. Thanks to Mr. Jeremy Barnes of National Museum for this. You see here Daniel Burnham's plan for Luneta. You have the government buildings surrounded by both sides, open spaces, a central lagoon. Really, it's America's version of the Washington, D.C. Mall in Manila. And at the centerpiece of that plan, or that new Luneta government plan, was the proposed Capitol building of the Philippines. So this is what it would have looked like if it was built. We know that Congress eventually took over the national or the legislative building instead, and this was not built. I found this fantastic image on Skyscraper City last night. It was made in 2005 by this guy named Bondurant. So thank you, Bondurant, for giving us this wonderful image, superimposed image of Burnham's plan for Luneta over a modern day Manila. So this is what it would have looked like from a 3D perspective, Google SketchUp. Here you have Maria Orosa, where the Capitol would have sat. And then this is the City Hall and the Legislative Building. Intramuros to the left, Ermita to the right, and then Rizal Monument there. So out of this entire plan, only these two buildings were built, the Agriculture, Finance, and the Legislative Building. So these are the traces of that Burnham plan for Manila today. Manila Hotel, built in 1912 during the time of the Titanic, was also part of America's sort of way of modernizing Manila. Manila needed a new hotel to cater to visitors up to international standards. So Manila Hotel was the central gathering place, social gathering place at the time. And now we go back to the Rizal Monument. Just as the United States, Washington, D.C. has the Washington Monument, America also approved for the Philippines' Luneta to have a monument. And they also approved of Jose Rizal. They agreed with the Filipinos' reverence to the hero. And so they decided to have a contest for the Rizal Monument. And 40 entries were submitted. all these entries, scale models were displayed in the Ayuntamiento of Intramuros. And interestingly, the judges none of them were artists. The Governor General of the Philippines, the American, was also one of the judges. So the winners of this Rizal Monument Design Contest won a prize of a whopping 5,000 pesos with a construction budget of 100,000. So yung first prize winner is from a guy from Italy named Carlo Nicoli, and he designed this 18-meter high ornate monument made of marble, the famous Carrara marble of Italy. And then the second prize winner is Richard Kiesling of Switzerland, much more streamlined, a little bit more low-key. But we all know that the second prize eventually was handed to Richard Kiesling. Why? Because one, they say that Carlo Nicoli was not able to pay the construction bond at the time, and also people said that his design was too expensive. So we have today Richard Kiesling's design, Motto Stella, or guiding star. So it took 4 years to cast the Rizal Monument in Switzerland. Again, after Rizal was executed, his remains were actually buried in Paco Park. And soon after, his sister exhumed his remains and took back Rizal's remains and brought it to her home in Binondo. And just in time, when the monument was being constructed in 1912, they had a procession from Intramuros with the urn. And you see here in the lower right-hand corner, the Knights of Rizal guarding the urn in the marble hall of Ayuntamiento. And from there, they would have a slow and solemn procession to Bagumbayan, or to Luneta, and they placed the urn inside the Rizal monument. The image above is a famous image of Rizal's mom cleaning his remains. So 1913, World War I was actually happening, and the new elections in the United States basically slowed infrastructure projects in the Philippines, and also the Philippine economy declined. So a lot of the projects initially were planned were stalled. Here's a higher definition photo of Luneta during that time. So you see here Luneta transforming over the next couple of years. You have the new Luneta, Burnham Green, the old Luneta, and then right behind it was actually Wallace Field, where you see here it says Future Government Center. That actually never happened. You have the ballpark, you had tennis courts, and the Luneta police stations. Here is an image of just on the edge of Luneta. This is Rojas Boulevard today and T.M. Calao Street. This is the Luneta Hotel and the University Apartments. Over here, you have the Miramar Hotel, to be built much later in Art Deco style. And then ito yung Jayco at Yellow Cab ngayon. Tapat nun yung Starbucks. So, very interesting ang linis, no? It's very, very clean. You can easily walk around. The Luneta Hotel, just across the street, is a famous hotel. It's the only French Renaissance Beaux-Arts design building in the Philippines. And it survived, actually, all the wars and even real estate interests. So it was restored recently in 2014. Thank you, Sheena, for this new photo. I incorporated it. Here we have, in the forefront, the Army-Navy Club, which is now the Rizal Park Hotel. It was strictly for the military, American military only, and even Filipinos were not allowed. Only white men were allowed in that building. Not even the Philippine president was allowed in that in the Army Navy Club. Here is today what we call the Museum Pambata, which was the Elks Lodge. Now the Elks Lodge is similar to, I would say, it's an American organization, similar to Rotary, but Manila was one of the only chapters outside of mainland United States, and they're still very active today in Makati. Here you have more reclaimed land. At the time, the U.S. Chancery was being constructed, which is now the U.S. Embassy today. You have Luneta here, and then Intramuros in the background. So again, Luneta in a colorized postcard. This is 1937, and this is a Eucharistic Congress, International Eucharistic Congress. First time held in the Philippines and in Asia. It is the largest gathering of Catholics in Asia. So this is 1.5 million people that attended Mass here in Burnham Green in Luneta. This beautiful, tall altar was just a temporary structure for that event. Another photo of Luneta. It's very much open space, just green. Mukhang mainit. This is where you would see Quirino Grandstand and Manila Ocean Park today. Sadly, nawala na yung view ng sunset. But the new Luneta had stunning views of Manila Bay. You would see the ships coming in to the harbor. Now we move on to the Manila Carnival, which was, I think, one of the highlight events of the year for Manila people. And even for people across the Philippines, they would come to Manila to attend this famous Manila Carnival. It was held in Wallace Field, just behind the monument, for about 1 to 2 weeks. And it consisted of a fair, an exposition, and of course, a beauty pageant. So here you have the fairgrounds. Every year, my theme, yung Manila Carnival, they had a lot of booths. Different people, different groups would be selling arts and crafts. Products from the provinces would come. This is a baseball diamond, tennis courts, and then you had entertainment. But really, the Manila Carnival was just one big fiesta, and you had parades and floats, and even different government agencies would have a float and participate in the processions. In the evening, there were balls. Every night there was a ball. Every club, every group had a ball. Any excuse to party during that time was during the Manila Carnival. This is a evening image of the Manila Carnival. Electricity at the time was very rare, and so people were at awe when they saw the Manila Carnival lit up. Thanks to Meralco. I could only imagine how it would have looked like. No, it's quite spectacular. You have here the Billiken, which is the mascot of the Manila Carnival. He represented the no worries attitude, the pleasure, and the fun. And really, the highlight is the beauty contest. It's a precursor to Binibining Pilipinas and Filipinos' love for beauty pageants. So you see here, it's really where it all started. A lot of these young men and women were high society people for the most part. They come from well-to-do families, and it was their parang coming out. You also had people from different parts of the Philippines. So you had a Miss Luzon, Miss Visayas, Mindanao, and then ultimately Miss Philippines. So being Carnival Queen was actually a big deal. They were like the it girls and the talk of the town during that era. So all of this comes to an end by 1940 when World War II actually starts happening across the world. Japan eventually captures Manila, and I really like this image of the 1 peso bill by the Japanese government, because you see so many influences in here. You see the style of the 1 peso is still patterned after the dollar, but it still says Japanese government, and you have Japanese characters, and you have 1 peso, which is a Spanish. The peso comes from the Spanish influence, no? And then, of course, the Rizal Monument on the bill. So this is the site of Luneta during the war. The Japanese army actually destroyed the pathways surrounding the Rizal Monument, and eventually they dug foxholes to hide from the Americans, thinking that the Americans would not bombard, or they would not shell the Rizal Monument, being the site of the national hero. Sure enough, they were right. So the Battle of Manila really decimated the whole area, as we all know. Manila was the second most destroyed city in World War II, completely leveled. This image was already the beginnings of the reconstruction. You see here the Department of Agriculture and Finance rebuilding, and to the left side you see them when they were shelled by the Americans. Why were they shelled? Well, this was one of the last holdouts of the Japanese army during the Battle of Manila, and so because they were stone and they were sturdy buildings, that's where the Japanese hid. Intramuros walls are completely gone at this point, and several of the churches inside Intramuros shelled, completely gone. You see San Agustin, Manila Cathedral. This is City Hall, Post Office. Around Luneta, you have the Central United Methodist Church, which still stands today. It is the oldest Protestant church in the Philippines. Most of the Protestant churches were established outside of Intramuros, like Ermita, for example, this Methodist church. So the image above is when it was completely shelled during the Battle of Manila, and then what it looks like today. Another church that was actually quite beautiful was the Episcopalian Church of St. Mary and John on the corner of UN Ave and Maria Orosa today. That too did not survive the Battle of Manila. And you see here what would later become the Hyatt Hotel, and then now the Waterfront Hotel on site. So, and then eventually on July 4th, 1946, we have the United States fulfills its promise and gives the Philippines its independence. So the raising of the Philippine flag and lowering of the American flag, and that was also featured in the old 100 peso bill. The current 100 peso bill doesn't have it. Doesn't have this image anymore. Tinanggal yung American flag. Luneta there were opportunities to rebuild Luneta according to previous plans, but the capital city actually moved away from Manila. Quezon City was to be the new capital of the Philippines. And so a lot of the development efforts and projects were moved out to Quezon City. That is why we have a lot of our government buildings out there, Bagumbayan and Congress, our House of Representatives, also out there. And so Luneta was actually proposed. They were actually proposing to demolish the buildings in Luneta and just keep Luneta as an open space or central park. But Luneta was able to revive itself, being the host of Asia's first international expo, which is the Philippines International Fair of 1953, where many nations participated and had booths. One of the most popular booths was actually the PAL booth here in the upper right-hand corner. And one of the main features was this abstract modern arch patterned after the Salakot. But it was really to showcase the Philippines' progress, being at the time a progressive nation, the second richest economy after in Asia after Japan. The Philippines was really in good shape, and the economy was taking off. So this fair was there to highlight that. But by 1960, another plan actually came about for Luneta. This was the Rizal Memorial Cultural Complex. And at the center of this complex was the Jose Rizal Memorial Theater. And then you have these modernist buildings done in international style next to the neoclassical styles of Daniel Burnham's original Luneta. Rizal Theater was never actually built in Luneta, and a smaller scale version of it was built in Makati, which is now the Makati Shang. That's where the site is. The only thing that came out of that plan was the building. This building, the building of the National Library of the Philippines. So that's why you have this modernist international style building there. And to celebrate the 100 the centennial birth of our national hero, Juan Nakpil decided to design something for the Rizal Monument, and it was a very controversial decision by several people to install steel pylons onto the Rizal Monument and give it height. They say that the reason for this was so that it would become a beacon of light for the ships that were approaching Manila from Manila Bay. So parang naging lighthouse si Rizal Tuloy. But within about a year or two, it was heavily criticized, and they decided to remove the pylons. And these steel pylons actually today you could see the markings on where the pylons once stood. So because of this sort of no one really taking over the monument, not taking care of it in the surrounding area, parang naging chop suey yung Luneta. The National Parks Development Committee was created to manage and beautify Luneta, created by President Macapagal. And the first chair was actually First Lady Eva Macapagal. NPDC would go on to manage other parks around the country. But Luneta, in 1967, was renamed to Rizal Park by Ferdinand Marcos. And First Lady Imelda also became the chairwoman of NPDC. But the modern Luneta, or Rizal Park that we know today, was really done with the efforts of Doroy Valencia. His efforts really beautified the park as we know today, in collaborations with national artists and architects to really provide a lot of the modern amenities and facilities that we have today. So the children's playgrounds, the waterfalls, a lot of the benches are actually still there from that era, from the 1960s and 70s. You have here the Chinese Garden, which was designed by a Taiwanese designer, architect. Planetarium celebrates its 45th anniversary this September. That was also built within Rizal Park, now managed by the National Museum. Fantastic exhibits. Once it reopens, I highly recommend you guys visit the planetarium. And so this is just an overview of Manila or Luneta over the last couple of years. So it starts with Bagumbayan, then you have by the Revolution, Paseo de Luneta, Burnham's Plan in 1905. 1940s, you have more reclamation areas, and then the development of the other government buildings. 1950s, you have the former Independence Grandstand. You have 1960s, the cultural complex. So this was before CCP, no? It was supposed to be here, the Rizal Memorial Theater, and then Rizal Park, 70s and 80s, and Rizal Park as we know it today. So I turn this presentation over to ED Cecile, to talk about Luneta today and our future plans.
Okay, I can't turn on the video. Okay, for the National Parks Development Committee, right now, so we were founded January 14, 1963, and we are under the Department of Tourism. So the two parks under National NPDC is Rizal Park and Paco Park. We were designated the flagship tourism enterprise zone by TIEZA. So we fully manage those two parks. And before, actually, we had Pook ni Maria Makiling in Laguna, Burnham Park in Baguio, and even the Quezon Memorial Circle before it was turned over to the LGUs for them to manage. So Rizal Park has 53 hectares, and Paco Park has 1 hectare. Just to give you an idea of the size of Rizal Park in terms of Central Park, New York, ours is 1 kilometer in length, and for Central Park, it's 4 kilometers. Right now, I think that's a bit small for urban planners. They usually prescribe a bigger area for parks so that people will enjoy it more. We have a bigger population, and Rizal Park is the biggest park actually in Metro Manila as of the moment. So this is the map of Luneta right now. The next slide. It's divided into 3 sections. We have the eastern section, the central section, and the western section. So for the eastern section, right now, because of the National Museum of the Philippines Act, that will become the National Museum Complex. So what we will retain is the central section and the western section of the park. For the western section, it usually holds the events like this is where the presidents usually take their oaths in the Carino Grandstand. As you can see, the crowds usually swell into a very large number. Even during the Traslacion, there are a lot of people in the Carino Grandstand area, in the western section area, for religious gatherings, meeting the avances, rallies, etc. So this is where people usually converge when they go in big groups. Also in the western section is the Kilometer Zero. Jess was explaining earlier that during the Spanish era, the Kilometer Zero was in Manila Cathedral. But because of the arrival of the Americans in the Philippines, instead of being centered in the church, it becomes more civic centered, meaning supposed to be the place for the government centers. So this is where the Kilometer Zero was placed. These are just some of the facilities that we have here in Luneta, because I think most of the people just notice Luneta as the one with the monument. So we have the Museum and Archives Gallery. We also have the next slide, the Chinese Garden, which we featured I think a few weeks ago, and also the Japanese Garden, where I think there are a lot of people who like this post of ours, because some people didn't even know that there was a Japanese garden here, but we are actually celebrating the 51st year of its founding, meaning it was done with the, I think, when was this? 1950, 1949? 1949. Next. For the open air auditorium, this is where we usually hold our concerts, concerts at the park, some of our variety shows also. And the Kanlungan and Scenic, this is behind the National Library. We are actually proposing right now to have there's a wall dividing the National Library and the park. So we wanted to open it up so that when you enter the National Library, you can exit to Luneta. So here at the cueva or the viewing deck, you can actually see the dancing fountain. Okay, there's lights, sounds, and even fire show happening every night from, I think it starts around 4 o'clock until the evening. For the eastern section of there's the orchidarium. Before, I think there are a lot of orchids there, but it dwindled into just a few orchids. So we are actually collaborating with the Nayang Pilipino Foundation because they have a lot of orchids which they will lend to us so that we can use it for the orchidarium. So these are just some of the flora and fauna here at the park. This is also one of our posts. These are the lantanas around the central section near the monument. These are our new landscapes, actually. New plants. These are forget-me-nots, a favorite flower of Jose Rizal. And we actually replaced the santans around the monument with gumamelas. There's also the fir trees around the park. I think this is in the eastern section. And then of course, the bougainvilleas. So here are just some of the before and after photos of our new landscapes. We are actually greening the park, and because of this pandemic, the park was able to breathe actually, and we were able to make a lot of the flowers bloom and the grass grow in certain areas of the park. This one was just 1 month after the greening, the ones without the grass, and then now with the grass. So we started last October the Stop and Salute. This is we do a flag ceremony at the Independence Flagpole every first Monday of the month. We usually invite different organizations, groups, and honor them during the flag ceremony. So, for example, like last December, we honored Rizal because the Rizal family, etc. For Children's Month, we also did that. So it's different for each month. It was very well attended, and a lot of people said that it sparked some sense of nationalism for them. So we still plan to continue it, but then because of the pandemic, we'll try to see how we can do it also in the future when things are more relaxed.
So we have here the retracing of the steps from Fort Santiago to Bagumbayan. We along with Intramuros in Facebook Philippines and BBDO Guerrero, plan to do this retracing of Rizal steps through AR technology. So you would be able to use your mobile phones, for example, and as you walk and follow these footsteps, information would come up. So this was supposed to be launched this June, but of course, pandemic happened, and so this project will be pushed to a much later date. But it's something definitely to look forward to.
For the children's playground, this was actually supposed to happen this year, but then part of the budget, I think it became part of the COVID stimulus program. So this is on hold right now. It will be, because it's from the eastern section, we will relocate it to the central section. These are just some of the TIAZA projects that are on hold. So the children's playground, the Bay Green restrooms, and also the Esplanade that will be located in the western section of the park. We have plans also for the open air auditorium because it needs some sort of makeover also, because it's been quite some time. So we've installed a video wall at the center stage. We are also planning to do some renovations in terms of how the look also of the stage, so that we can have more performances or quality performances behind a more professional backdrop.
And again, when we open, please come to our shows. They're free shows for the public. We have up and coming performers and cultural performances as well. So here in Concert at the Park and also in Paco Park Presents. The orchidarium that we were talking about, is also underway. We are scheduled to turn over a lot of the 3,000 orchids from Naim Filipino into this new home here in the Orchidarium of Rizal Park. So we're definitely working so that once the park opens, we have new attractions for the public. So this is the Japanese garden that we are also planning to renovate, adding Zen gardens, more rocks, a bonsai garden as well, and really giving the whole site an uplift. It's been 51 years, and we want to introduce more Japanese elements. This is also in partnership with the Japanese embassy, who's been very supportive of our proposals. It's very exciting, and we really want to feature the friendship between Japan and the Philippines and incorporate more Japanese elements to it.
We also partnered because of this pandemic. Actually, even before this pandemic happened, we wanted to improve the rice garden that we have right now in the western section. So we partnered with Department of Agriculture and the Bureau of Plant Industries to make an urban farm. It's actually to showcase what an urban farm would look. So right now we are in the process of finalizing the design. The design is this one. And then we're starting planting, I think, soon, just in time for the rainy season. We plan to do some workshops also to encourage people to do gardening, home gardening actually, or even gardening in their condos or where they live. And then maybe during harvest, we can do like farmers market also in the Burnham Green area. So that's one thing that we wanted to promote. Even composting, how to like manage your waste, etc. Those are some of the projects that we are doing right now, because I think food security is something that we are all thinking about because of this pandemic. This one we mentioned.
Yeah, the National Museum Complex. So again, going back to some future plans in the eastern section that Edie talked about, the National Museum complex. Has proposed to follow the Burnham Plan in its redevelopment of this section. You see here the radiating roadways and new buildings that will be put on the site. And again, here we have the facade of the Paco Park Station, which they intend to move from its current site in Paco. Kasi ngayon medyo natakpan siya dahil sa construction of the SLEX NLEX connector. So saving this facade would also be a complement to the neoclassical designs art and architecture of the National Museum. So these are just conceptual only. They're still under discussion, but it is an exciting development for this eastern section of Luneta.
I think this is one of the questions in the Q&A, if there's some sort of how to combine, how to make an area of Rizal Park, Intramuros, and Paco Park. So there's actually we started a convergence between Manila City Hall, Intramuros Administration, and NPDC together with TIEZA. So what you can see, the yellow, the ones highlighted in yellow, the roads leading up, connecting the different areas. Those are actually going to be connectors so that we can do a pedestrian and bike trail, so that movement from one place to another is more fluid. We have been in talks already with all of us, and we agree that it's best to connect all of these areas into just one, and we call it the Manila Heritage Trail to promote like a circuit in that area. But this is also on hold because of the pandemic again. So maybe we can restart the discussions again after everything normalizes.
And that concludes our presentation. Yeah, so.
Thank you, Ms. Cecile and Mr. Jez, for the presentation. It was a very interesting topic. I think your share screen is still on. Yeah, no, there. So, if I may add on the discussion, your insight on the connection between Intramuros and Bagumbayan is very interesting, no? Because as we can see in the name Bagumbayan, this is actually a portmanteau of two Tagalog words, Bago and Bayan, which means new town. And which is interesting because the original Manileños, who were under the Rajas, they were expelled from their own land when Manila was re-established as a Spanish city. So they moved to a new settlement, hence New Town or Bagumbayan. That is very interesting. And another one, your insight on how the Americans moved the landscape and used space and architecture to project power is very, very interesting because it is true, no? It is quite true. And citing Gerard Lico in his book, Edifice Complex, we see that spaces can actually be weaponized so that it can covertly transmit expressions of force, coercion, and seduction. And the more covert it is, the more powerful it is as a weapon for power. And this is because while it is true that we as people shape space, the spaces also shape us and the way how we think. And those who have the power to control the landscape and those who have the power to shape the urban space have in turn the power to control other people. So this is a very interesting topic that we have here. Now, we are now going to the Q&A portion, but before that, we would like to launch an informal survey or informal poll for our Zoom viewers today. So I'm going to open it now. There. Can you see it? Is it on? Yeah. So this is a poll to see uh, kung in from our Zoom attendees kung alin na yung mga napuntahan nila. And then later, perhaps we can discuss. So this poll will run for 20 minutes. Anyway, so it's nice to see familiar faces again in our Intramuros learning sessions. So we see again, hello Dennis Cebollena, hello Miss Lou Revilla and Neil Evangelista as well as Diego Torres. Thank you again for patronizing the Intramuros learning sessions. Right, so we are now opening our Q&A portion. So I would like to remind everyone that if you have any questions, you may raise them in the Q&A button below if you are in Zoom, or if you are viewing via Facebook Live, you can also raise your questions in the comment section. Due to limited time, not all questions will be answered on air, and our I8 team led by Jeffrey Yap will give written responses as much as they can. And also the Q&A will be good for around 30 minutes or so, but we can extend if the speakers are willing. So, right. So, I will now read the first question. This is from Kimberly Lagman. So, is there any plans for the footsteps of Dr. Rizal to be restored? And yeah, so that was the question.
So yes, there are plans. It's a very it's actually low hanging fruit between Intramuros and NPDC to establish this connection through the footsteps of Jose Rizal. Again, that was what we talked about earlier. We wanted to do with AR, so augmented reality, with the help of BBDO and Facebook Philippines. So we will restore the footsteps of Dr. Jose Rizal.
Thank you. We have a question from Neil Evangelista. So, Intramuros kasi recently installed new wayfinders. So, new signages, new markers. Is the NPDC also planning on undertaking the same project?
We are actually going to install new wayfinders also, similar to what Intramuros has installed. We're in the process of finalizing some of our artworks actually to make it something fresh that we're working on something so that people will know where you are, at the same time also identify the places in the park.
And just as an interesting tidbit, and we only discovered this recently, we can't really rebrand. You could only rebrand every 10 years. So NPDC is actually due for rebranding next year. So isasama na namin yung mga wayfinders na rin with the rebranding that we're going to do. So yes, we do have plans to include that for next year.
The next question is from RJ Punungbayan. He's asking, clarifications on the transfer of Paco Station. Will we include the restoration to its former glory when we transfer it to the eastern section as part of the National Museum complex? And this is not part of his question. This is something I would like to ask as well. Is the monument fronting it also included?
Sa alam namin, yung facade lang. Only the facade of the Paco station will be transferred. So it's gonna be parang like a gateway arch into the eastern section. So it won't actually be rebuilt as a train station or the building behind it that was destroyed. The monument in front of it of the Japanese General Bashano, that will remain there. That's under the city of Manila. So they're still going to be managing that.
Right. from Justin Policarpio. Hello, ED and DAT. I will just ask, how are we incorporating sustainability in our designs, development, and management of our park?
Jess, you want to answer that?
Well, definitely. As soon as when we sat in office, one of the first things that we banned really was plastics and the use of tarps. And the same thing goes. We want to instill that with our vendors that are selling things in the park. We want to create more sustainable, provide more sustainable sort of means for them. That's why we're also introducing the urban farming. That could be an alternative parang livelihood for our vendors. And also, we're also, because of our redevelopment plans, we're also trying to showcase to have a more state-of-the-art MRF facility. So that's also in the works.
We also wanted to be a venue for anything environmental. For example, waste management. It's a big problem in Manila. So that's one of the first few meetings that I had with some of our stakeholders, like Manila Hotel, the hotel surrounding the area, because the trash in the bay usually comes at a certain with the tides. So sometimes those trash actually are, you can actually, it's biodegradable, but then we all make the city get the trash, and then it becomes such a big problem because they don't know where to put it because of the amount also of trash that they have to haul. So what we wanted to do was to improve our MRF so that we can be a venue, so that we can promote how do you take care of your trash, or how do you throw your trash properly, even composting. I think that will be a big help for the commercial and residential establishments also.
And we also have solar panels, care of JICA. We definitely want to expand that program as well, so that we can introduce renewable energy into the park.
Thank you. This question is from Nemesio Makalintal. Is there any possibility that we can showcase or plant around Luneta only our endemic plants? So is there, yeah?
Actually, that's one of the things that we are promoting. What the endemic plants, there's also we also wanted to put in as one of the trees to highlight the one in the central section, the bagras. Those are rainbow trees, which is actually endemic here in the Philippines, specifically Mindanao. It will take some time because I think there are some trees that we have to coordinate with DNR, how to change it up also. But we are making that one of our priorities.
Yes, exactly. And even some of the mahogany trees that are growing, which are not endemic, we're slowly removing them in places where we can. Of course, with approval. So yes, we are very conscious of that, and we want to promote our indigenous plants and species and trees. Yes.
In this present pandemic, we see that the interest for bikes have been increasing steadily, and we can understand why, because of the limited transport, and of course the pleasure and the leisure that comes with having a bike. Now the question is, do we have any plans related to cycling or bike lanes perhaps? And there's actually a suggestion here. What do you think of the park having shower rooms? Because the park as a recreational space is a sports space as well. So the shower room might be a good idea as well.
Okay, I'll tackle that. Yeah, so definitely, cycling is allowed in the parks. Of course, we kind of manage it sort of by ear, play it by ear. Kasi pag marami masyadong tao sa promenade or central section, we don't allow it. But if it's if there are not many people, we definitely allow it. And we even right before COVID, we partnered and signed a MOA with BAM Bikes to promote bicycle tours from Intramuros actually, and also within Rizal Park. So it's definitely something we want to promote. And even the area around outside Luneta, there's a bike lane already on the Intramuros side. So we want to create a network and connect Luneta to the overall network. And even Edie mentioned kanina yung Manila Heritage Trail. So that's where bicycles are also allowed, so it's interconnected with all the other tourist sites in Manila. Bicycle showers or showers for cyclists are also part of that plan of the Manila Heritage Trail. So definitely we have kept the cyclists in mind. So we have that planned, even the showers.
Yeah. From Reese Alvia, what are the other plans to make Rizal Park more interactive and more entertaining for the younger generation? And is it possible that some elements or past plans for the park may be added very soon?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sorry. From Reese Alvia, what are the other plans to make Luneta or Rizal Park more interactive and more entertaining for the younger generations? And the second part is it possible that some past plans or some elements of the plans may be implemented soon?
Okay. Definitely, that's. Oh, go ahead, Edie. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Like for example, the Japanese garden. It's there's renovation. I mean, we need to actually develop the area, that garden. So we with the plans that we have, if you saw the slides for the Japanese garden, by adding a lot of the elements which make it more. I know that the younger generation want an Instagram. It's always it has to be, if it's not for Instagram, I mean, it's not something that they would be interested in. But at the same time, aside from it having a beautiful garden with, let's say, there's a bonsai bonsai. We're incorporating bonsai Zen garden in the Japanese garden. So those are the things that we want to do. Like for example, even the ones that we posted, the blooms at the park, we wanted more, aside from having a relaxing place to rest or to exercise or ever, the younger generation can go around the park and also enjoy the other amenities that we have right now. The second question is, sorry, I didn't see the second question. The second part of the question.
The attendee is asking if any of the plans, I think she's referring to the pandemic, any of the plans that were stalled by the pandemic, is there any chance that they will be implemented soon?
That one, we are working on having that implemented. But of course, it has to depend on how, what will happen also within this year. Like for example, for the events, it will be very difficult to have like the usual events that we have, because most of the time, whenever we have events, there's around 15,000 to 20,000 people at the park. And right now, I think people might be a bit scared in terms of the transmission. So we're also balancing the safety of our park goers at the same time with promoting also the culture and the arts in our park.
From Roger Honrejas, can the whole park be a free Wi-Fi zone? And from Edgar Ibanez, is there an official guided tour managed by the NPDC?
We actually partnered with Smart and Globe. So the whole park they have actually put in the facilities already. So the whole park is now has free Wi-Fi. care of Smart, and I think Globe is in the process of finalizing everything, the facilities. So with that, yes, we are now. It's a free public Wi-Fi zone, but we kind of turned off the service right now because of the pandemic. So, but it's easily turned on as soon as we normalize again the schedule of the park.
From Ron Kalumpang, with the threat of climate change and rising sea levels exacerbated by Manila's subsidence, are there any long-term plans related to Luneta and the Greater Historic Manila District within this context?
For the flooding.
Yes, for the flooding.
For the flooding. Um, I guess in terms of the flooding, that's one big problem actually that we usually encounter when the rains come in. One of the solutions I think that might address this is there's a moat supposed to be outside Intramuros. If you saw the presentation also, it was covered by the golf course. So I think when we do open up that area and turn it back into a moat, the water actually will flow there. Because if you see in the map, the waterways, there's a canal. So the waterways really go through Luneta. That's why there's flooding there, because some of the waterways were closed off. So if there's a chance to open up those parts and return it back to how they're supposed to be used, maybe that will address the problem of like, flooding also in Manila. But
And also,
specifically,
right. And also, from what I know, the plumbing of the area around Luneta is still actually from 100 years ago, or more than 100 years ago. Some of the pipes are actually still from the American era in the early 1900s. So talagang kailangan ng massive overhaul yung mga sewage natin in the periphery. And even Burgos Drive, just between us, Intramuros and Luneta, there's no sewage there. There's no sewage line there. So it's in the works that we're trying to push our partners to develop and update the sewage plan around Luneta, because it's been more than 100 years.
Jessica May Paulo has a very deep question. So, where does NPDC stand in the dynamics of urbanization? So, I think she's referring to the general urbanization of the entire metropolis. So, in that context, where does NPDC stand, or where does the Rizal Park stand? And how does the institution progress and preserve at the same time?
one of the things that we wanted to push for this is to make it more, to develop more parks. I think there was a study that you're supposed to have a park every 10 meters. Jess, is that right? I mean, there's a study that you're supposed to be near a park so that you can, it's for your health, actually. It's good for your health. So one of the things that we wanted to push for is to develop more parks, not just Rizal Park as the area for everyone to converge in, but for, let's say, even the barangay levels or even the LGUs to have different parks. It's very, it's good that actually Mayor Isko is also an urban planner because he wants to develop more parks in Manila. So that's one thing that can address the population. I mean, it can benefit the population, but of course, it might take some time in terms of how to develop more parks. We want to be the go-to of the LGU Sana, so that when they ask how to develop parks, we can be consulted also and then promote more parks for the population. I mean, for everyone.
Yes, we're actually drafting a bill right now to be submitted to Congress to lobby for a national parks act and to give strengthen our agency, and give it some teeth in terms of leading and helping and assisting in urbanization, not just here in Manila but across the Philippines. So any experiences that we have in managing and developing parks, we want to be that central agency to do so. So We can be consulted by LGUs. So yes, that's also one of our big plans, ambitious plans for the end of this administration, to have a national parks authority nationally.
All right, the 20 minutes is up, so I'm now going to end the poll. So let's see what we have here. So I'm going to share it. There. So it seems that, can you guys see it? The poll results?
Oh,
It seems that our attendees are very familiar with the Museum and Archives Gallery, which is great, no? But the Cueva and Viewing Deck, RT7 and Orchidarium, they're not that known, no? Hindi sila ganun kasikat. So, in order for us to promote these lesser known places, the Artist Haven, the Cueva and Viewing Deck, and Orchidarium, what can you say to our attendees so that they may be interested in visiting these sites the next time that they visit the Rizal Park? So, do you have any interesting trivias that you can share regarding these three spaces, the Artist Haven, the Cueva and Viewing Deck, and the Orchidarium? And is this Cueva cave, as in a literal cave, or is that a surname of a person?
For the artist haven, right now the area is, we're actually fixing the area. So we're in talks with, we mentioned this earlier, we're in talks with the National Library to have an exit towards the park, so that when you enter the National Library, you can exit to the park, and it can be a venue for, let's say, artists like who are busking or those who are painting. So that's the concept that we have, and maybe have an area where you can drink coffee. So like looking out to the park. So we are not yet. It's not yet that finished. That's why I think the people. I mean more. I mean they're not aware of the area. Also with the viewing deck, and the cueva is actually a cave. It looks like a cave. But it's not the lasting of a person. So a lot of people know about the viewing deck. I think maybe they just pass through it, but they don't know that they can go up it. I mean up the stairs and then see the dancing fountain from the area. Also the orchidarium, because it's a bit closed also. Because we don't have the orchids yet, and it's hard to promote the orchidarium as an orchidarium when you don't have enough orchids. So those three actually we are in the process of fixing up. That's why I think maybe a lot of people don't know about it yet.
but it is open for private events. We had several events inside the cueva, inside the orchidarium, inside yung Kanlungan ng Sining or Artist Haven. So, yeah.
Do we have any schedule now on when these places can open? So is it already open to the public, or are we waiting for any lifting of further quarantine?
We are we're in the process of finalizing some of the protocols so that we can open it up for exercise. A lot of people are looking for a place where they can either walk or even bike, and we're just being careful, extra careful, so that whenever there's a group of people who are here or those who want to go to the park, they're safe. We want to make sure that they're safe here. We don't have a specific date yet, but we will announce it in our social media accounts when we do open.
Right. We have some questions left, and I think we can finish this in time. From La Charmaine Saiki. Yeah, I understand that the Pinagbarilan kay Dr. Jose Rizal is undergoing renovation before the pandemic. My question is, will it be the same light and sound presentation?
Um, it will be it will be the same one, but we are trying to incorporate something more modern also. Those That's one of the things that were mentioned to us when we went around during the AR walk. The Because from Intramuros to Rizal Park, when you do the last walk of Rizal, you want it more updated. So maybe we can use the AR as one of the new features also of that area. To incorporate also a modern lights and sound, maybe we can propose that also, but not maybe not this year, but next year.
Okay. From Nina Racela. Are there any plans to add another Rizal-related section in the park? Uh, like a section perhaps highlighting information not known to many?
I'll take that answer. So I would say yes. In the proposed new children's playground of Chiesa, one of the things that we included in the terms of reference for bidding out that project was to include and highlight information about Rizal's childhood. So that's one of the, I guess, the newest sections that we can look forward to. So you have a children's playground, but also an area that's focused on Rizal as a child and his childhood.
Thank
We
you.
also wanted to have a similar to Intramuros, the night what's this the night events in Intramuros. We wanted also something for the evening crowd, but that was before the pandemic. So we wanted to have a tour at the monument itself, so that you can go up there up close and have a night tour of the monument, and to explain also, like for example, we envisioned like students reciting the Mi Ultimo Adios at the monument, and even having some sort of like souvenir shop also to promote Rizal, because there's no since there's no souvenir shop yet here at the park, and we know that in other countries, that's one thing that's in parks. There's supposed to be like souvenir shops so that you can actually like promote also the park and also the Jose Rizal.
We also recently signed a MOA with the Knights of Rizal, so they're also very excited to collaborate with us in developing more things that are Rizal related.
This one is from Ivan K. Bantigue. Do you think that the future plan to Luneta Park is more into historical path or commercial path? Uh, and if I may add on that question, how do you balance commercial sustainability and historical sensitivity?
So, like what we earlier mentioned about the Manila Heritage Trail, I think that's one thing. That's the historical aspect that you might be looking for. Because if you go around Manila, there's a lot of history for Manila, and just like the story of Luneta, just one part of the Manila story. But of course, how to balance with let's say the commercial aspects, since we are a flagship tourism enterprise zone. It has to be it can't be that we build a lot of structures in parks, because what's important in parks is the greening of the park. I mean, that's the flora, the fauna, the grass, etc. That's important, but at the same time you also want to give options to the park goers so that they also have a good park experience. So that's one thing that we usually take into consideration, not to the point that it's so commercial that you become like a mall or something like that. I mean, it's not supposed to be, because you're a park, so you have to be more into the sustainable and something more to do with the environment.
It was stated earlier that the brand of Rizal Park is due to be revised next year. So Patrick John Terrado asks, what is the current brand of Rizal Park, meaning the outgoing brand, and what is the brand that will replace said outgoing brand? And Will it be completely different, and how will it affect the current and future attractions inside the park?
When we talk about the rebranding, it's the rebranding first and foremost of our agency. So it's NPDC as an agency can only be rebranded every 10 years. So that's the first thing that we're trying to tackle. But in terms of Rizal Park as a brand itself, we're actually shifting towards promoting Luneta in our branding. While officially it's still Rizal Park, but Luneta resonates more with the public. Kasi when you say Rizal Park, medyo nag-iisip ang mga tao, they're like, what Rizal Park? And that's just that's an honest response that we normally get when we say Rizal Park. There are numerous Rizal Parks across the Philippines, across the world, but there's only one Luneta. So parang when we talked to DOT about this, they were very open to the idea of promoting the Luneta brand or Luneta Park brand kasi mas kilala yun. And so that's where we're kind of shifting the branding more on Luneta. Of course, Rizal Park remains, but it's more of the look and the graphics, similar to just to freshen the look and feel of our parks. So Paco Park will also be rebranded, and also future parks that NPDC will manage and oversee will also have its own branding as well. So you have the agency of NPDC, and then you have each park under NPDC that will have its own brand.
Our next question is from Ryan Guillartes. So, Ryan Guillartes. So, with regard to the proposed new structures at Rizal Park, I think it's referring to the eastern portion, the one to be managed by the National Museum. Did the NPDC consider coming up with architectural and urban design guidelines so that these new structures would be cohesive with the current architectural and urban character and brand of the park? And but first and foremost, does NPDC have a set of architectural guidelines for the park?
So there is actually the TIEZA master plan that we are following and implementing. But given that there's also a master plan, we are in constant talks with TIEZA and even National Museum in terms of how we are going to formulate our master plans. The initial master plan, I don't know, maybe it was, I think, 2012, if I'm not mistaken, or 2014. So there's a need also to update it. That's why sometimes when there are structures that we need to bid out or to with TIEZA, I mean those that will be approved, we usually tell them to make it more neutral or make it more historically correct in terms of what the structure should be in the area. In terms of the park guidelines, that's one thing that we want to come up with, a specific like guidebook, even a manual, like park guidelines specifically for the parks, so that whenever there's any event or anything that you need to do structurally or anything that needs to be addressed by the park, there's something that we can refer to always, not just based on discussions or not just become reactive to a certain situation.
Okay. Our next question. This is actually the last question. So this is from Oscar Medalla. So are there plans to put more lights around the park and to make it brighter in the evening? And also, are there plans to modernize and rehabilitate the water fountain in the park?
Okay, for the lights, actually, we were a bit envious of Intramuros because of the night tours. I think that was in February, right? Or January. Yeah, after the holiday season. So, even Secretary Bernadette actually helped us in hooking us up with some of the suppliers, how to, I mean, some people so that we can actually make it more bright in the monument, specifically in the monument area. We were in talks already with in how with Meralco even how to light up the park, but then because of the pandemic, everything was cut short. I mean, the discussion it hasn't materialized yet, but that's something that we are considering in that area to make it more consistent with Intramuros. We're also going to be using capiz shells. So that it's a bit unified. Same thing with Manila City Hall. They're using capiz shells. So that's something that we will actually put up in Luneta also.
It's a directive for us. So yes, it's definitely gonna happen.
That ends our Q&A for today. And before we proceed, since today is the birthday of Rizal, how was Rizal's birthday celebrated today in the park? So we were talking about this earlier amongst us. Would you like to share with our viewers how the birthday was celebrated?
It was a bit low key, I think, for this year because of the there are a lot of I mean there are IATF guidelines that we have to adhere to. So we got a lot of wreaths for Jose Rizal. From the Knights of Rizal, from the Rizal family, from the National Historical Commission, and I think there were two more also, and also the agency. What we did for this year to celebrate it is to offer flowers also at the monument. Like one, I mean, some of the employees, like 5 each, they go to the monument and then lay down like a flower each. So we wanted to open it sana to the public, but we didn't want a big crowd to gather during the GCQ. So maybe by next year, that will be something that we want to do to open up the monument so that people can offer flowers directly to Jose Rizal on his 160th birthday.
Thank you for that. And if you have any more questions, you can go to NPDC's email info@npdc.gov.ph, and you can ask questions from there. Just put in the subject Intramuros Learning Sessions questions. And so that was our open forum. So, and for those who have missed this session or for those who came in late, don't worry. This episode will be uploaded later in our YouTube channel. You may key in Intramuros Administration or go to the link bit.ly/ILS, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to stay tuned to our announcements as well, because we have a lot of events coming up, online events coming up. So we are available in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Miss Cecile and Mr. Jess, would you like to promote your social media as well?
Yes. So check out our Facebook page, National Parks Development Committee, and our Twitter and Instagram are npdc.ph. So please add us or like our content. We're also I'll use this chance to promote. We're finalizing a series on Jose Rizal as well, in partnership with Tahanan Books with their Halo Halo special. So look out on our social media platforms for the webinars about Jose Rizal. So it'll be a really interesting series.
Right. Thank you so much. So everybody, please follow the social media channels of the NPDC.
NPDC.ph.
And also, just to make a quick announcement, next week we're going to have 3 Intramuros Learning Session episodes. So 3 episodes in 1 week. So we're on Manila Day, June 24, we're going to have the eminent historian Lorelei de Viana, who will be talking about 19th century Spanish Manila in the time of an epidemic. So heritage in time of disease. And the second one will be from one of the pillars of the Intramuros administration herself, the magnificent Esperanza Gatbunton, who will be talking about the Indio response, the museum collection of the Intramuros administration. And lastly, for next week, we also have part two. This is actually the sequel of our previous Battle of Manila episode, but it will have its own title. So, Heroes of World War II, Part 1. So, by Desiree Ann Cua Benipayo of the Philippine World War II Memorial Foundation. So, she will be talking about Escoda, Abad Santos, and Lim, the three people in our 1,000 peso bill. So, if you are wondering who these people are in your 1K bill, feel free to watch our episode with Desiree Benipayo. And also, before I forget, tomorrow we are co-sponsoring an event with the International Council on Monuments and Sites. So the title will be Placemaking and Food Security, Thinking of Heritage Conservation and Food Production. So this is in line with the trend right now of sustainability in times of pandemics. So the webinar will feature Fernando Nakpil Chalcita of the Ateneo de Manila University, Patricia Maria Santiago of Nanayong Filipino, and Estela Duque of the Moline Chocolat. So these are some of our webinars. And meron pa pala, we are also available now in Google Arts and Culture. So for those who missed going to our museum, we are now in Google Arts and Culture. So we are now bringing the museum, our museum collections, the virtual experience of our museum collection to the comfort of your own homes. And
Rancho,
yes.
Sorry, just wanted to add also for June 24, we're helping Manila City celebrate Manila Day. So we're lighting up the monument in red on the 24th. So because we saw Mayor Isko also do the replaying earlier, so that's one of the things that we're promoting also at the party.
Thank you so much. And before we end our episode, would you like to have some final words?
Happy birthday, Rizal.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone for watching. And thank you for your questions.
Right, so that's it, everyone. Thank you so much, and see you again next week for our upcoming episodes. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.